Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Zane Raudenbush. I'm a turf grass scientist at Ohio State University. We're doing things a little bit different this year with a virtual field day. Unfortunately, I had to pretty much stop my research program, so I don't have much to present in terms of research. So I have been wanting to make a video or a series of videos for many years now on a topic that I receive the most questions on, and that topic is how do I renovate my lawn? Or people describe to me what they want in their lawn and what it currently is, and we pretty much arrive at the process that they need to go through a lawn renovation. And that usually involves a series of questions and answers, and the purpose of what I want to show you over these, it's going to be about a 5-part series, is how to actually go through this process of renovating your lawn. I think a lot of people believe it's an intimidating piece to actually go through and kill your existing yard and prep a seed bed, but I can tell you that if you follow these steps that I'm about to outline for you over the next 3 weeks, you will have a very high chance for success. So the first thing I want to talk about is why you may decide to go through a lawn renovation. So you might think as a turf grass scientist that I would have this beautiful lawn, but as you can see, I'm sitting in a nice patch of ground ivy. And so one of the primary reasons that you may decide to renovate your lawn is that you have some really difficult to control perennial weeds. And some of those could be even perennial grassy weeds, things like nimblewill, creeping bent grass, orchard grass. These are weeds that we don't have a lot of great selective tools for in terms of applying products and eliminating them from the desirable turf grass. You may also have, which is occurring in my yard, as I like to call it, the Heinz 57 of a lot of different turf grass species. So in this yard, I can see perennial ryegrass, pasture type tall fescue, turf type tall fescue. There's fine fescues. There's Poa trivialis underneath the swing set. And so in terms of uniformity of the yard, it really lacks uniformity. All these turf grass species have different textures, different colors. And so when people think of a beautiful turf grass stand, they think of a real uniform texture and color. And that's what I'm going to try to achieve through this renovation. And then the other one is just it simply increases your property value. So I'm going to hit on all 3 of these. I have plenty of difficult to control weeds in my yard. It is a Heinz 57 of different turf grass species, and I'm certainly all for trying to increase my property value. So as I mentioned, the series, we'll call it a mini series, is going to go through about 5 different videos. And today I'll give you a little bit of an introduction, and we're actually going to get right into controlling the existing grasses in the yard, and I'll get into why that is. But the date today is August 5th, 2020. We are getting into the prime time. So one of the things about going through a lawn renovation is that the chances of success are going to be increased immensely if you go through this process in the late summer, early fall timeframe as compared to the spring. And trying to go through this in the middle of summer, I really don't recommend. Summer is just a really difficult time to try to establish grass from seed. Fall is ideal because one of the things that really drives turf grass establishment from seed is soil temperatures. And so right now, in August and September, we have high soil temperatures, but the air temperatures, particularly at nighttime, begin to get down into the 50s and 60s, and that is desirable. Many fronts is good for turf grass growth. There's not as many diseases that can control or kill the young seedlings. And so this is the prime time. It can be done in the spring. One of the biggest issues that we see trying to renovate a yard in the spring is that the soils are cold. And so everything happens very slowly. It takes a long time for the plants to germinate. It takes a long time for them to establish. But even more so, what begins to happen is the temperatures increase. You're going to get a lot of competition from annual grassy weeds such as crabgrass, foxtails. And so really what we're getting into right now is the prime time. So when you see these videos, you will have time to execute exactly what I've done. The seeding window where we are in Ohio, I would say the prime time is going to be from the end of August until mid-September. You certainly can seed all the way up until October 1st. I have done seedings after October 1st, some of which have turned out really great. But after October 1st, you really run the risk of those seeds germinating, and we get very cold temperatures and could actually kill the seedlings. So after October 1st, I think you really need to be very careful, maybe even consider pushing that off another year. The other thing I want to discuss is the size of the property. So we are going to, and my property is about 5,000 square feet total. I'm only going to do the backyard. And I often recommend this to people when they want to do renovations. I recommend that they split the renovation into the front and the back. I like to see them start with the back because we all learn things as we go through processes. So the back is kind of the spot that's away from all the curb appeal. So if you make some mistakes, you'll be the only person that sees it. And so you get the process down. And then the next year you could attempt to do the front yard when you've kind of got all your ducks in a row. So let's actually get into the steps of what we're going to do. These are just my arbitrary steps. I wouldn't say that you're going to find these in any textbook. But the first step that we need to do is we need to control the existing vegetation in the lawn. All those things that I mentioned before about the different textures and colors. Turf grasses are perennial species. And so they're going to come back year after year after year. And so we need to control them. And that's going to be done. I'm going to do it through the use of a non-selective herbicide. What that's going to do is actually control the weeds and the grasses that are here and give us a fresh slate. So whatever we introduce via seed into the yard is what hopefully is going to exist. Versus if you would seed into this, you'll see that you end up with the same problem, that you may introduce some desirable plants, but you're still going to have all these undesirable plants cohabitating with what you've just worked so hard to plant. So right away, I want to control the existing vegetation, so I'm starting with a clean slate. The second piece is one that I think is a make or break, and that is the seed bed preparation. So we need to prepare a proper seed bed to give these seeds the greatest chance for success. And when I speak to a lot of homeowners, one of the things that they often want to do and are very quick to want to do is to till the yard. They want to get a tiller and they want to cultivate the yard. Excuse me. I really, whenever possible, attempt to avoid tilling up or cultivating the yard for many reasons. One being that beneath my feet is a seed bank of weeds that will never germinate unless they are brought to the surface. And so going in there and tilling the ground just disturbs that seed bank, and you bring a lot of weeds to the surface that are then going to compete with your desirable turf grass species. The other thing is it just creates a mess. You're going to bring a lot of loose soil to the surface, and then you're going to see that we're going to be irrigating afterwards, and it's going to make mud. So if you have to move about your property and walk through these spaces, it just makes for a mess. And so you'll see as we control this existing vegetation, we're going to come in and we're going to actually do what's called power raking. It's a machine that puts small slits into the surface, and we're going to do that several different directions. That creates a really nice niche for those seeds to fall into, but does not result in bringing a bunch of weed seed to the surface. We end up with these decaying plant carcasses that create a nice mulch for those young seedlings. So in terms of the seedbed preparation, whenever possible, I'm a big fan of power raking or some type of verticutting into the surface. I really attempt to avoid tilling whenever possible. A situation where you may till is if you know that you have really poor soil. Perhaps it was a construction project and they dug up the subsoil, and that's what's been deposited on the surface. We can't grow grass in subsoil. We need good topsoil. That might be an instance where you would bring in some type of compost and mix that in with the existing soil. But for my purposes, we're going to use a power rake. The third part will be actually the seeding. So selecting a high quality turf grass mixture or blend, which I will get into in subsequent videos. What I'm going to plant a turf type tall fescue yard here, and I'll talk about why that is. But that's a key piece. You're going to go through a lot of the work of going through a renovation is your time. And really, you will see I'm going to try to attempt to keep the budget less than $150 to do this entire renovation. So a lot of it is time. And when it comes time to select the turf grass species, you don't want to skimp. You've done a lot of work. For just a few cents more, you can often get something that's quite superior to a kind of a cheaper seed mixture or blend. And so after you seed, there's going to be post-plant care. And that post-plant care could come into fertilizing and irrigation. So one nice thing that I like about doing the front and the back is that if you are going to irrigate, it allows you to have more control. If I was going to do my entire yard, I'd be having to move a lot of sprinklers around, and I'd be totally reliant on Mother Nature. By doing a smaller area, I'm going to be able to irrigate My wife's not going to be too mad for me running the water bill way up. Hopefully we'll keep it to a manageable number. But that post-plant care, if you have the ability to irrigate, you really increase your chances for success. If you don't have irrigation, this can still be successful, but you will not be in control of the timeline. Mother Nature will be more in control of the timeline, and I'll get into why that is when we actually get to the video on seeding. And then the last one is just getting to that first mow and what takes place after you begin mowing. You'll see that these plants are still young. I would not want to invite the football team over and host practice, that these young seedlings do need to be cared for. You need to try to reduce the amount of traffic that they see until they're somewhat mature. So that's what the subsequent series is going to be on. I recognize it's something a little bit different, but I really would encourage you. This is a fun endeavor. It's one that hopefully after you watch these videos, you will see that there's nothing to be intimidated about. And you follow these steps as I'm about to lay them out for you, you will find that you will have success, and you will have a yard of one that you've always been envious of, and one that you'll be able to brag to your friends about. And pretty soon, before you know it, everyone will come in and knocking on your door. So I hope you find this helpful, and look forward to bringing you this information over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I wanted to quickly show you what I was talking about with the poor uniformity in my lawn. You can see here off of my back steps, it looks like over the years before we owned the house, somebody planted several different species, and one of those is this pasture type tall fescue that has a very coarse texture. And you can see some of the finer texture. This is perennial ryegrass. The perennial ryegrass has had a rough year in my backyard. It has succumbed to leaf spot. Here you can see the ground ivy that's really grown and began to take over this part of the lawn. The ground ivy could actually probably be controlled, not probably, could be controlled with some selective herbicide applications. But I'm really interested in getting rid of some of these coarse textures. If you'll follow me over here, you can see underneath our swing set that we have a lot of Poa trivialis. This, I would be surprised if somebody planted this purposefully, but it is a stoloniferous plant. It's slowly creeped out into the yard now over the past 3 or 4 years that we have lived here. I'm surprised it's still green. Usually in the summer months, this really pretty much goes completely brown. So it looks okay right now, but most years it looks really, really poor. And then if you come down to this part of the yard, you can see some of the fine fescue that I'm talking about. So you'll notice this part of the lawn is really does not receive a lot of sun. One of the things that I will do is I'm actually going to limb up some of these trees just to try to get a little bit more sun for these young seedlings. But you can see large patches of fine fescue here, which fine fescue is a great grass, and if I had an entire yard of it, I wouldn't have any problems, but I just have these small 5-foot, 6-foot diameter patches. And I just wanted to quickly illustrate. So I did plant a couple patches of grass this spring. This is a patch of perennial ryegrass. It was a 5-way perennial ryegrass and looked really, really good up until last month. And as I mentioned, leaf spot just really came in and did a number on this perennial ryegrass. And right here is a patch of turf type tall fescue that I planted at the same time, and I was just curious to plant the two right next to each other. And you can see that, you know, still have good color, good density. This is what I'm after. I would like an entire yard that looks like this. I have seen from my experiences thus far really holds up well in terms of keeping weeds out, has good color, requires very little irrigation. The Achilles heel of turf type tall fescue is that it is susceptible to a disease called brown patch. However, brown patch typically is not a killer of tall fescue. It can aesthetically decrease its color in the summer months, but it can grow right out of it without any issues. So this is what we're after. So I just wanted to show you a little bit about, you know, why I was actually going to go through this process, because we're looking to increase that uniformity.